Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Darnell De Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you're doing fine for yourself during a time of major uncertainty. Currently, right here in Southern California, things are getting a wee bit back to normal. For those of you that don't know, I am very active when it comes to church activities. Like, I do church stuff, I'm not joking, like 4 or 5 times a week. And so, church stuff is coming back to normal again. There are some churches that are allowing, like, in-person sacrament and sermons. We have some churches that are just right now doing outdoor sermons right now. We got some outdoor meetings, indoor meetings. Strangely enough, though, just yesterday I went up to a mall in the Irvine area, and everything is perfectly normal. Like, everything's all normal, man. It's like you go out there and you go to the mall, all the stores are open. There's like some limits to some stores. Some stores, there's like a 20-person, 10-person limit at times, sometimes. But for the most part, everything in Southern California kind of is back to normal again. And I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, so as I'm talking right now, it's September of 2020, but I wouldn't be surprised by December of 2020, or at the very least by early 2021, things can all be back to normal again. I can see it. Online classes are back on. And the reason I'm saying why everything can be back to normal again is because so far, at the very least in the world of sports, I'm mostly focusing the NBA here more so than mixed martial arts, because in the NBA, there are far more variables, far more things that can go wrong in the NBA. Also, football is back. Football is back. Last night, there were watch parties going on for the Cowboys LA Rams games. Like, football is back. We got watch parties going on again. Buffalo Wild Wings is open. Like, Buffalo was open, and we had people lining up to go watch a football game in Buffalo Wild Wings in large groups. So, yeah. You know what? The year of 2020, it's been really difficult, but things are getting back on track yet again. And I'm happy about that. And another thing that I am happy with is the recent UFC Fight Night event, which was headlined, which was originally going to be Glover Teixeira against Thiago Santos, competing in 5 rounds in the light heavy division, but instead, Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill, they got bumped up to the main event, and I was super excited about this. I really am, because I've been a fan of both fighters, and I think that both fighters should have won their last respective fights. Michelle Waterson should have defeated Carla Esparza. Angela Hill should have defeated Claudia Cadella. I believe that from the eye test and the fight stats, say that both Watterson and Hill should have won their respective fights. And now we are seeing Watterson versus Hill. Both fighters who are desperate for a W right now, and I want to know who would win this matchup here. Now, in the predictions, I predicted that Michelle Waterson would just overdo it with the karate and the leg kicks and the body kicks, and she would just harass Angela Hill away at a certain point of the fight. Yes, Angela Hill will be the one who will be pressuring on Michelle Waterson, but as the fight were to go on, Michelle Waterson is going to go and play keep away to Hill, and those leg kicks and those body kicks is just going to accumulate over the course of the entire fight. And the end result was Michelle Waterson defeating Angela Hill via split decision. And it was a controversial fight. I'll be honest with you, it was another controversial fight. I feel bad for Angela Hill yet again, because it was easily a fight of the year contender. Best fight of the entire night. But honestly, here's it. Statistically, the best performance of both fighters in their entire MMA career. Truly was. So let me give you some fight stats over here. First off, Michelle Waterson landed 162 out of 361 total strikes, 45%. Landed 128 out of 324 significant strikes, 40%. Interesting number here. Michelle Waterson landed 1 out of 18 takedowns. She attempted multiple takedowns, and Watterson only landed 1, and that was in the third round. And the interesting thing here was that when you were reading up predictions, as when I was reading up predictions and looking at other people's takes and viewpoints on Watterson versus Angela Hill, a lot of people chose Angela Hill winning this fight because they were really pushy on the fact that Michelle Waterson's grappling and wrestling is decent. She doesn't overly excel in any specific thing, and so she's an alright striker. No, she's a slightly above average striker. She's an average grappler. She's like complete 50-50 in the clinches. So Michelle Waterson's overall advantage versus Angela Hill isn't all that much. It really isn't. And it was shown that Angela Hill was able to go fight back against Michelle Waterson's wrestling. But now let's look at Hill's fight stats. Angela Hill landed 146 out of 278 total strikes, 52%, so she landed 16 less strikes, but had a 8.5% more better striking accuracy. Angela Hill landed 131 out of 261 significant strikes, 50%. So Hill did much more better in the significant strike percentages and total strikes landed through significant strikes, but she's only 16 off from the total strikes compared to Michelle Waterson, and she was only up by 3 strikes from Hill to Watterson in terms of significant strikes, 131 to 128. Angela Hill attempted no takedowns, but let me bring you the advanced fight stats now at this point. So I'll talk about the fight stats versus the eye test here. Let's go it per round. Angela Hill landed 26 out of 56 total strikes. Michelle Waterson, 21 out of 57. It was an obvious round that Angela Hill won. Within 2.5 minutes of the first round, there's a whole lot of swelling going on and a cut on Michelle Waterson already. Second round, Angela Hill landed 33 of 62 strikes. Compare that to Michelle Waterson's 31 of 78. Once again, Angela Hill did much more better than Watterson in both the eye test and the fight stats. Third round, Michelle Waterson landed 13 of 34, Angela Hill 11 of 22, and Michelle Waterson was able to go get a takedown into the third round. Michelle Waterson obviously wins third round. Fourth round, Michelle Waterson landed 26 of 58. Compare that to Angela Hill's 22 of 46. And at this point, the volume that Angela Hill was throwing was significantly a lot less. And at this point, Angela Hill was the one who was backtracking. For first and second round, it was Hill chasing Watterson. Then Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill were kind of right in the center of the octagon here, trading shots, and Watterson was able to get a takedown. Then the fourth round, it was Michelle Waterson backpedaling the entire time. And for the most part, to the eyes of the judges typically score rounds for the fighter who is being the aggressor. And since Watterson was being the aggressor in the fourth round, both the eye test and the fight stats say Watterson won the fourth round. And then we go to the fifth and final round. In the bottom left hand of the screen, you will see fighters like Aljamain Sterling, like Cody Garbrandt, like Brett Okamoto. We got analysts, fighters, fight fans, all saying 2-2. And that's what I said. I said the fight was 2-2. So the fifth and final round here, the winner of the fifth and final round is going to be the one who wins the fights. And you can hear this. You can hear Michelle Waterson off screen just screaming, yelling like, "Yeah! Let's go! Yeah!" Even though she is gassed out. Because you'll like the camera pans over to Watterson, and Watterson's like breathing heavily, like then the camera cuts over to Angela Hill. And you can hear like Angela Hill's camp being like, "Okay, Watterson, she's getting tired, man. You got this." Then you can hear, "Woo!" So Watterson's all pumped up. Angela Hill, she's all pumped up. They go and they meet in the center octagon. They go out there and they just straight up throwing shot after shot after shot. Yikes. Could go either way. Fifth round, going off eye test yet again. Especially nearing the end of especially in the last minute of the fight. where the fight started becoming a lot less about poking and more of dirty boxing and clinch work, I give the 5th round to Angela Hill. And the fight stats reward Angela Hill here in that she landed only 2 more strikes than Hill. I mean, Angela Hill landed only 2 more strikes than Michelle Waterson. 37-39. But Michelle Waterson attempted 18 more strikes than Hill. And I always say this, judges always score or always prefer the fighter who is trying to dictate or force the pace of the fight. So, while I judge Angela Hill winning the fights, while I judge her winning the 1st, 2nd, and the 5th round, the 5th round being the closest round out of all the rounds here, one could make the argument that Michelle Waterson won the 5th round. You can reward a fighter for having high volume and high pace. And here's the thing. The 5th round was the highest volume of strikes throughout all the rounds. There was more action in the 5th round than any of the other rounds. There was more action in the 5th round than the 3rd and 4th round combined. Just go with that, okay? Just go with that. But yeah, when Bruce Buffer came up in the middle, he said, "Winner this fight be a split decision, Michelle Waterson." Angela Hill had the same reaction she had when she lost to Claudia Cadella, where she's like walking off, mouthing off, being like, "Oh man, no way, dude. No way I lost that. No way." So, that's the result there. Michelle Waterson ended up defeating Angela Hill after 5 rounds of action, which is, without a doubt, one of the best fights of the year. Angela Hill did an awesome job preventing and stopping Michelle Waterson from grappling, from wrestling, other than the 3rd round, where it was painfully obvious that Michelle Waterson won. You could have made the argument that Angela Hill possibly could have won. And one also, in terms of, I'm trying to explain as to how it got to this point. One way how Angela Hill or her supporters could say that she won the fight was because her strikes mattered a lot more. Because I'll be perfectly honest, by the end of the fight, if you just look at both women's faces, you could say, okay, obviously Michelle Waterson, she got a lot more battered than Hill. She looked a lot worse than Hill. Even in the fight replays, there were more highlights and shots of Angela Hill stomping Michelle Waterson in the face with her fists than Michelle Waterson did. From an aesthetic standpoint, it looked like Michelle Waterson was eating the much worse hits, or a lot more worse hits, than Angela Hill was. But, let me bring up the fight stats again here. Michelle Waterson focused a lot on the legs. She had a lot more bounce approach here, with like 50-31-17 here. A lot more bounce approach and a lot more attempts on towards the leg strikes and the body kicks. Compare that to Angela Hill, who was mostly focusing... By the way, here's one thing. From an aesthetic point of view, it's easier to reward a fighter throwing out body kicks compared to somebody throwing out body punches. That's reality. I'm looking at the fight stats here. Michelle Waterson landed 23 of 31 leg strikes. Compare that to Angela Hill's 4 of 4. And even though Angela Hill landed and attempted more strikes into the body of Watterson, it's a lot more harder to reward points for a fighter doing, a body shot with a punch compared to a body kick. And even Angela Hill, her clinch strikes was 25 of 29 compared to Watterson's 13 of 17. So, fight stats say Angela Hill won. Anybody with a keen eye could say Angela Hill should have won because her strikes matter a lot more than Watterson. But, to the eyes of the judges, Watterson did just enough for her to win the fights. I feel sad for Hill. I believe she should have won the fights. That's not the reality of things. She ended up losing, but by the end of it though, everybody was standing up. If this fight was in a packed stadium, everybody in the arena would stand up and start clapping. People know the value and the worth of Angela Hill. She is good enough to compete with anybody in the women's strawweight division. Anybody. She is that good. Even though she is a low-ranked fighter in the division, she is as good, if not better, than a whole lot of women, and she can go and compete with the very best in the women's strawweight division, despite what her ranking says. So she's a dark horse. She's a dark horse contender. She's that good, and I'm excited to see what comes next for Angela Hill. She's obviously in the good graces of both the UFC and the fans. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. Welcome back. You listen to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast. And so I'm talking about UFC Fight Night, which had a headliner of Angela Hill versus Michelle Waterson. Michelle Waterson was able to go away with a split decision victory, but the other big fight was Roxanne Modafferi against Andrea Lee, to which Roxanne Modafferi won via unanimous decision. Going to the fight stats, here we got Roxanne Modafferi. She landed 48% of her strikes, 129 out of 267. She landed 35% of her strikes, 60 out of 169, and got 4 of 7 takedowns. Now for Andrea Lee, she landed 118 out of 210, 56% of her strikes, and her significant strikes, 97 out of 189, with 3 out of 4 takedowns. And when I look at the fight stats here, oh my goodness, this fight should be closer, but it's not. From both the eye test and also the fight stats on a per round basis, Roxanne Modafferi apparently won this fight unanimously, which is weird because when I was looking at this fight, if you look in the bottom left hand on the screen, when you hear the commentary team, it looked like Roxanne Modafferi was pretty much beating Andrea Lee for the most part in this fight. Yeah, like Andrea Lee got some takedowns in, but Roxanne Modafferi was able to reverse it out, so her takedowns really didn't count. There was one instance in this fight where it looked like Andrea Lee was doing good for herself, and that was in the first round. Honestly, in the first round, here's the funny thing about the first round. Apparently, in the first round, it was just unanimous that Roxanne Modafferi won that first round, which is shocking to me because I thought the first round was the closest round, and from that point on, it just became Roxanne Modafferi all the way. So it was a good showing by Andrea Lee in the first round here, but Roxanne Modafferi's just overall experience and veteran leadership here really just pushed her to go win the fight. So I am shocked and surprised that the fight stats make it seem like it was a much more closer fight than it actually was, which is very surprising for me. But Roxanne Modafferi ended up winning the fight via unanimous decision, and I agree with it. The fight stats say something else, but I agree with the actual result here. So Roxanne Modafferi and Michelle Waterson both won their respective fights in the women's flyweight division and the women's strawweight division. And what else is going on? Let's go to the news brief over here. This is coming from WMMA rankings here. That Brazilian bantamweight Larissa Moura seeks for a second belt, taking on former Contender Series Mayana Kellen. Larissa Moura, who is 3-1, will face former Contender Series Mayana Kellen at Mr. Cage on October 24 for the bantamweight strap in Manaus, Amazonas. Amazonas Moro continued to rise in the regional rankings. She won her first belt back on March 7 against Elaine Mercario at the Skull Champions Girl. This became the first all-woman MMA fight card in Manaus. Moro trains at Cosma Junior Team, where UFC bantamweight Caitlin Vieira trained earlier in her career. With only 4 pro fights, Moro draws attention in the talented scope of bantamweights in the Amazonas. Moro started her career on a loss to Pamela Vellante and at the Amazonas Regional in 2017. She won the last 3 bouts, 2 finishes, and 1 unanimous decision. The bantamweight will make her Mr. Cage debut. Meanwhile, Caitlin has fought 3 times under the promotion. In December 7, Caitlin defeated Ana Cristina Costa in the first round via Dr. Savage Mr. Cage 40. She competed at Dana White's Contender Series back in 2018. Maribetta Silva submitted Caitlin in the first round via Ninja Choke. The women's bantamweight belt will headline as the main event, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on October 24. The fight will be streamed on TV Masaki's Facebook page. So now you know. What's very interesting was that this past weekend we got the debut of 2 fighters. There's Bellator 245 and Bellator 246, and we had the debut of Liz Kamushi against Denna Bennett, and then we have Cat Zingano making her MMA return against Gabby Holloway. Now, I'll go first. I'll talk about the Gabby Holloway versus the here's the thing. So both debuts were very similar. I'll be talking about Holloway versus Cat Zingano first, but they're very similar in that there was a sense of desperation. This is how I perceived it. There was a sense of you have to finish this fight because both of these fighters fight very similarly to Carla Esparza, and they made the same mistakes that Carla Esparza did in her fight against was it Amanda Ribas? It was against Miranda. I think it was Amanda Ribas or Rena Marcos, whatever. But in Carla Esparza's last fight, she was this really good grappler, similar to Liz and Cat Zingano, but then she was way too reckless in her striking, and she attempted multiple submission attempts when she really shouldn't have. So for the first round, it was Cat Zingano all the way. Round 1, it rings. She blitzes right in. She's already outstriking Gabby Holloway, and it's now just wrestling her. I think one of the first things she did was goes in, hits a jab, and a spinning roundhouse kick. And I was like, dang, look at you, man, spinning roundhouse kick. And then she blitzed Holloway and went in for a takedown. And then immediately the commentary team was saying what I was saying. They're like, wow, Cat Zingano there, pulling off a very risque move here. She needs to go breathe. She needs to relax more because she's doing things that if she were to fight against a higher level fighter wouldn't pan out well for her. It just wouldn't. And obviously this fight was booked, and the way how it was set up in the presentation was set for Cat Zingano to go and win the fight. Because here's the thing. When it showed Gabby Holloway, Gabby Holloway, her record, height, weight, where's she from, where's she fighting out of, and then you saw Cat Zingano, and when they showed it to her, her little, lower thirds, they started pointing out all of her accomplishments, and the only thing that the commentary team did to put over Gabby Holloway was them saying, yeah, man, Gabby, she's never been knocked out or finished in her entire MMA career. Now look at Cat Zingano, one of an all-time great, woman pioneers of all time in the past 10 years. A real trailblazer. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, wow, I really want to cheer for Gabby Holloway now. I really did. But when round 1 started, Cat Zingano she did a really good job. She did. She did a really good job, wrestling and grappling with Gabby Holloway, and the only reason why she defeated Gabby Holloway through all 3 rounds of action, more or less, is a lot of it comes down to experience and just being so much more better fighter than Gabby Holloway. She's a lot more of a clean fighter. And so Cat Zingano, she grappled with Gabby Holloway for pretty much the majority of the first round, and the same thing applied for the majority of the second round. But then, no. So majority happened for the first 3 minutes of the second round, but she started gassing out. It was obvious she put a whole lot of energy in herself in the first round. On top of that, for some reason, even though Cat Zingano multiple occasions was on top position of Holloway, doing some ground and pounds, doing some really good control work, actually. There are multiple occasions where Holloway was able to reverse out, but then Cat Zingano was able to reverse back in and get into a better position. Yeah, she did a good job wrestling and grappling with Gabby Holloway. Problem, though, is that she then attempted multiple submission moves when she really shouldn't be. It was kind of strange, because it's like, alright, here's that. Cat Zingano, she's raining down ground and pound onto Gabby Holloway. And then, instead of just constantly punching her or controlling her on the ground, Cat Zingano would then transition to a single leg heel lock or to an arm bar. And I'm just like, what are you doing here? Because there were instances where Gabby Holloway, she was on the ground and she was near the cage. And typically what you mostly see, actually, is that you would go see the grappler, the wrestler, position her, put herself to side control, or put her in the opposite direction, or put her in the same direction of where the cage is, relative to her opponent, in order to prevent her opponent from getting onto the cage. Instead, what happened, though, is that she never did that. She kept, pulling off these submission moves that she really shouldn't be. She's, laying off her from top position. She's not putting that much pressure on her. And the only reason why she was able to keep Gabby Holloway on the ground for that long was because she was that skilled enough. But there's no way she can pull that same thing she did on other women's fighters at a higher level. And 3 minutes after the second round, to which it was the same Cat Zingano was just grappling with Gabby Holloway, there was no way Cat Zingano was going to win this fight via TKO or stoppage. I just didn't see it happening. So there was an instance where Gabby Holloway was able to reverse out and get on top, I think this is a back mount or a mount position, but no. So she was able to get back position. So Gabby Holloway was able to go get on back position on Cat Zingano and rain down these vicious elbow strikes, man. Insanely vicious elbow strikes. Goes over to side control, lays down some knees, and Cat Zingano, she was just there. There was a momentary piece of time that went as long as a minute, to which Holloway was raining down these hard, vicious strikes onto Cat Zingano, and Zingano couldn't do anything. She really couldn't. And the only reason why Zingano was able to reverse her way out of it and got into a half-guard position with Gabby Holloway was because Gabby Holloway, after just a full-on minute of throwing in these harsh elbows, she just became gassed. She became tired. Commentary team recognized it. They're like, yeah, smart move by Cat Zingano there, waiting for a full minute to let Gabby Holloway get tired for beating her up. Really smart fighter right there. There's a lot of weird passive aggressiveness coming in from the commentary team with Liz Kamushi and Cat Zingano. And then got to the third round. So I got to the third round, and this fight mostly became more clinch-based. It's more clinch-based fights. Gabby Holloway did a good job clinching with Cat Zingano. When they did clinch, obviously Holloway was a much more physically dominant, more stronger fighter. Without a doubt, Gabby Holloway was a hard hitter, was the bigger fighter. I think she came in 5.5 pounds past the weight limit, and she looked much more bigger than Cat Zingano. So, already right there, Cat's already fighting somebody who is a lot more bigger than her. So, you know what? Zingano's like, no striking. Enough of this clinch stuff. I'm going to go and try to take you down immediately, and that's what she did in the third and final round. So, after 3 rounds of action, Cat Zingano was able to go to defeat Gabby Holloway by unanimous decision. Good job there for Cat Zingano. There were definitely some red flags in this fight for Cat, though. It wasn't the best showing. To be honest, it wasn't the best showing for Cat. She could have fought better. She fought very recklessly. The way how she fought in this fight, there's no way she could... If she were to replicate that performance at a much more later date, things would have turned out bad for Cat. They really would have. Now, for Gabby Holloway, though, Gabby Holloway, sadly enough, though, Gabby Holloway physically has a higher ceiling than... Because there's an 8-year age difference. There's an 8-year age difference between Zingano and Holloway. And only time can tell how much development Holloway can become, down the line here. She had a good showing. She was physically a lot more dominant than Zingano, and in the second round, which in my opinion was the closest round out of all 3 rounds, there was a brief moment there to which Gabby Holloway could have walked away with a TKO knockdown. Yeah, when she was on the back position, raining down the elbows, I genuinely believe that if Holloway were to control herself better on the back position on Cat Zingano, we could have seen Gabby Holloway win the fight. Huge underdog victory for Gabby, and she would have won the fight via TKO. That is a real possibility that should have and could have happened, but instead that didn't happen. Then there's like in 5 minute fights, 5 minute round, second round, Zingano controlled her for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then there was only 1 minute to which Holloway was controlling the fight, and it led to Holloway and it led to her being tired, being gassed out, leading to Cat Zingano being able to reverse her. So in the span of 5 minutes, Holloway was winning in just 1 minute out of the 5 minutes. But in that 1 minute, she was able to dish out more damage than Cat Zingano did in the 4 minutes she had, advantage over her. If that makes any sense. In the sense that by the fight numbers and by the fight stats, obviously Cat Zingano was winning because just a sheer number of total strikes and ground control. Yes. But did I really believe Gabby Holloway was really taken aback from any of the ground and pound or any of the striking that Cat Zingano was giving to her? No. Not at all. I think, here's the thing. Gabby Holloway did better in the ground and pound than Cat Zingano, in my opinion. Her strikes were a lot more better, and she was obviously the more powerful fighter. It is she wasn't as skilled enough as Cat. And so Cat was able to go take advantage of that, and right now, I'm happy for Cat Zingano. She was able to do this. She was her making her big MMA return. There's a lot of expectations for her already coming into the title scene. She, by the way, this was at the 145 featherweight division, which is ironic because the UFC featherweight division pretty much is non-existent right now. I think it would have been really good if both Liz and Cat Zingano were to be part of the women's featherweight division for the UFC, but that's not happening, and we still don't know what the future is for that division. And so coming up right after the short break here, the short commercial break, I'll be talking about Liz Kamushi against Denna Bennett. Coming up right here, the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast. So I'm talking about the Bellator debut of Cat Zingano. And I said that, well, there are a lot of red flags in that fight. I thought she fought way too recklessly in that. Which brings me to the other woman who made her debut, and that is Liz Kamushi. It's hard for me to describe her name. Liz Kamushi, Liz Kamuche, Liz Carmouche. Okay, I'll go for Carmouche then, because I think that's more simple for me. But she fought against Denna Bennett. And I'm looking at the odds here. So, Liz Carmouche, she was the favorite, minus 675. Compare that to Denna Bennett, who was plus 475. Which is astounding to see how the heck the betting odds were this far and few between. Because, oh my goodness, the actual fight in itself was a war, okay? It was a scrappy fight war. And Liz Kamushi, she... Alright. the way I compare Liz Carmouche against, I'm sorry about the name, Liz Carmouche against Denna Bennett, really is if Cat Zingano fought somebody who was at a higher level other than Gabby Holloway. I feel bad for Liz Carmouche here in that like she had a much more tougher matchup in Bennett. Because here's how it went. Fight begins, round 1. These two are just scrapping each other, man. They're just going at it. Although Liz Carmouche, she was able to go and pull off the wrestling and was able to go take down Denna Bennett, though. When it got to the stand-up, oh my goodness. If you were to just go by, like, stand-up fight numbers, dude, Denna Bennett, one could argue, was winning first and second round. You could argue that, actually, because I think it was in the first round that Denna Bennett, she had, I think, like, plus 27 in significant strikes landed in the first round. And then, I won't say significant, I'll say, like, just total strikes. She landed 27 more total strikes than Liz Carmouche. And although Carmouche was able to go get a takedown and was able to do some groundwork on Denna Bennett, though, I don't really believe that Denna Bennett was at all in a bad situation from a takedown. So this, what I'm going to say right now, really is subjective in the sense that if fighter A were to take down fighter B, how much should you reward fighter A for getting a takedown if the takedown and the ground control wasn't all that much? So yeah, unlike Cat Zingano, to which Cat Zingano, she took control of Gabby Holloway and she was able to keep her there for a while. For Carmouche, though, she was able to get a takedown on Denna Bennett. Bennett stands up, and then they both of them get back up. Liz Carmouche then goes in for this like German suplex looking thing, brings down Denna Bennett. Bennett stands up, and then she starts putting out these this really good boxing clinic onto Liz Carmouche. And so for the first round, the score obviously goes to Liz Carmouche, kind of, in the sense that Liz Carmouche, she got the takedowns, even though Denna Bennett got plus 27 strikes. But because of the takedowns, the high volume takedowns, and the fact that Carmouche was able to go pull off some good significant strikes, we could argue that Liz Carmouche won the first round. All right, we can agree with that. I think most people agreed that Liz Carmouche won the first round. You can hear the commentary team and people have commenting the fight. They all believe that Liz Carmouche won the first round. Okay. And so let's go to the second round. What happened in the second round? Well, I don't have the exact numbers here in front of me right now because finding Bellator stat numbers is a lot more difficult. But it was just like 55 plus. Yeah, it was like 55 plus total strikes landed, and Liz Carmouche was pretty much gassed at the second round. And there were instances to which it really looked like if Denna Bennett just had a little bit more punching power, she could have just knocked out Liz Carmouche, man. I remember there was an instance to which, because in the first round it was Liz Carmouche pushing the action, and then the second round it then became Denna Bennett pushing the action, and there was an instance where Denna Bennett laid out a right hook onto Liz Carmouche, and Liz Carmouche started trailing it backwards. And then here's what I believe. I hate it when people who are good at boxing or have their opponent on the edge decide to just clinch on the cage. I never understood that. I think the logic behind it, though, is okay, let's say you stun a person. You stun a person with the right hook, and then the other person's stumbling. They're on the cage. Why would you go and try to shoot in on the leg or go for a clinch? And then go for dirty boxing later? That never made sense to me. And there are multiple instances in the second round where I look at Denna Bennett and I'm like, oh my goodness, you got her on the ropes. You're doing a good job. Awesome. Why the heck are you clinching? It's like she either overcommits in trying to be overly aggressive on Liz Carmouche that it ends somehow with either her just clinching with her or Liz Carmouche just grappling on and grabbing onto Denna Bennett. And to me, that's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. All Denna Bennett should have done was she should have stumbled Liz Carmouche, which she did, and then she would slap. And then as Carmouche is getting to the cage, Denna Bennett gets in closer, but kind of backs away, preventing Liz Carmouche from going for a clinch or going for a takedown. Just be prepped up for it though, and then just go and throw in some good jabs and some good strikes from the mid range. There were instances where Denna Bennett was winning the fight through poking Carmouche and fighting in the mid range, and then when she was doing a good job fighting in the middle of the pocket, Denna Bennett would go just dive in deep and do some dirty boxing when that dirty boxing was a complete 50-50 shoot. And honestly, I'm not going to give either woman a complete win on the dirty boxing. I'm just not doing that. And then this leads to the third round. So first round, Liz Carmouche. Second round, Denna Bennett. Third round, must win for both fighters. And you know it's must win, and you know both fighters are desperate for a win here because both of them started throwing out insane, wild strikes. Like Liz Carmouche's strategy of I'm gonna go grapple her and grind her out. No, that didn't really happen. It didn't happen. So both of them started scrapping each other, and then there was an instance where Denna Bennett just lunged towards Liz Carmouche, and Liz Carmouche was able to go and just grab her in the clinch. And I don't get why Denna Bennett set herself up for this. She allowed Liz Carmouche to grab her in the clinch because Denna Bennett isn't really good in the clinch or for dirty boxing or fighting inside the pocket. Liz Carmouche tosses over Denna Bennett, able to go get on the back of Denna Bennett, and then they're sprawling, they're switching, they're rolling over, which leads to Liz Carmouche getting a rear naked choke in on Denna Bennett. So after 3 rounds of action, Liz Carmouche defeats Denna Bennett via submission. And I'm looking at the betting odds yet again. The betting odds shouldn't have been this despair. Minus 675, huge favorites, plus 475 for Denna Bennett. This fight could have gone either way. Alright then, this fight seriously could have gone either way. And if Bennett and Liz Carmouche were to fight each other 10 times, it's very probable that it might go 50-50. There were instances to which Denna Bennett should have won this fight. There are instances that she could have won the fight. I think she fought way too recklessly. I thought she made the wrong decision-making skills there. And if these two were to fight each other yet again, then maybe it could have been better. It could have been better. Okay, so I'm right now looking up, this coming in from MMAJunkie.com. After a successful Bellator debut, Liz Carmouche loves the idea of a flyweight Grand Prix. Oh, interesting. So, I'm trying to get this out. Liz Carmouche is willing to battle it out by this being written in by Farah Hanoun. Liz Carmouche is willing to battle it out with Bellator's best flyweights to get a crack at the title. Liz Carmouche, she's 14-7 MMA, 1-0 in Bellator, made good in her promotional debut, submitting Denna Bennett in the third round at Bellator 246 in Mohegan Sun Arena. Initially anticipating that a win over Bennett could lead to a title shot against champion Leigh McFarland, Carmouche is also open to the idea of a potential flyweight Grand Prix that has been previously discussed by Bellator president Scott Coker. I think a Grand Prix would be amazing, Carmouche told MMA Junkie at a post-fight news conference. All of us fight for the opportunity to be the contender. Leigh may get to sit on the sidelines, drink some Budweiser, watch it all go down, and get to see and experience every fighter and know who she's getting into. I think that's amazing, and I'd love to do something like that. Carmouche's training partners and good friends is McFarland, but both ladies have expressed no concerns in fighting each other. The former UFC 135-pound title challenger has come close to Captain Gall on numerous occasions with her career. We'd like to see Bellator introduce a women's bantamweight division to open up the opportunity to become a 2-division champion. If Bellator introduced the 135-pound division, I would love the opportunity to have a belt there at 135 and go back up. Carmouche said, I do feel really good at 125. I feel like that's a good weight for me, but the opportunity to hold a belt in 2 divisions is really appealing, and 145 is too big for me. Oh, man, 2-division champions. We're going to deal with this yet again. They want to open up the bantamweight division. I wouldn't mind that. That would be a really good thing. And you know what? With Amanda Nunes, potentially, I'm just saying out there, potentially retiring at some point next year, maybe, just maybe. I think it would be great for that. I think it'd be great. Let's have a bantamweight division happen right now in Bellator. It'd be good. I know Dana White has expressed that he does want to go see a really stacked bantamweight division, That's why the featherweight division right now is pretty much non-existent, and that he's just putting all the featherweights go compete in the bantamweight division. Meanwhile, there's actually a pretty strong bantamweight division right now in Bellator, and it'd be nice if Bellator can have a good bantamweight division and a good featherweight division. But the problem, though, is I personally do not like 2 division champions. I don't like it. The worst case scenario happened with Nunes becoming a 2 division champion. All because you're a double champion doesn't mean you have double the responsibilities. No, you don't. You really don't. It leads to a scenario, having somebody be a 2 division champion leads to one division becoming stagnant for a period of time. Because let's say right now, I think what happened with Ryan Bader. Okay, so Ryan Bader lost one of his belts. He was 2 division champion at one point. So let's say Ryan Bader was 2 division champion again. All right, he was like heavyweight and heavyweight. Let's say he had a really tough fight in the heavyweight division, and then he gets medical suspensions, and that lasted him for 9 months. What happens to the light heavyweight title then? That's bad. And then we have Amanda Nunes and Henry Cejudo, 2 fighters who ended up becoming 2 division champions. But Henry Cejudo, he upon defeating TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight belt, he never defended the bantamweight belt. It's so weird. He defeated TJ Dillashaw, and then I'll about that. He defeated TJ Dillashaw, defended the belt once, and then he went on to go fight someone else. It's just like, man, it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous how 2 division champions works. I am not supportive of it. I genuinely don't want to see it, honestly, then. 2 division champions is way too much of a hassle to deal with for one fighter, for one promotion. You can't force a fighter to compete twice as often or be obligated to go compete twice a year. They can't just do that. I'll be open for a Grand Prix, man. I love it when Bellator does these Grand Prix tournaments, actually, because because narratives and stories start being built and character work start being built off these Grand Prix tournaments. For as gimmicky and as carny as the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix was, it got people to watch it. It got me interested into trying to get into Bellator. It got my family members and friends interested in Bellator. So yeah, I'll be up for it. I'll be fine for it. If they want to do a Grand Prix tournament, sure, no problem. They can do that. Just don't go and do 2 division champions. If one fighter wants to, do what John Jones did, practically. Where it's like, the only way you can go and get a title fight in another division is if you vacate your title. And that title that you're carrying right now, that pretty much is like your key of giving yourself an automatic title fight. Alright, so you're a champion, you want to fight another champion, sure, that's fine. The belt pretty much gives you enough, of like brownie points for you to go and argue away into going for a title fight. But gosh darn it, man, relinquish it. Just relinquish it. And I find it so hilarious right now that everyone is trying to aim to be a 2 division champion, and we've had so much 2 division champions come and leave in the past 3 years that I'm getting really tired of it. I really am. So once again, you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast. Coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And And we are back once again. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA podcast. I'm talking about the debut of Liz Carmouche and Cat Zingano in Bellator. How did they both do? Well, they both won their fights, but they were both very tough fights. And is coming in from MMAfighting.com. Cat Zingano amidst Bellator 245 win was a terrifying fight for me. Nearly 2 years after a bizarre ending to her fight with Megan Anderson at UFC 232, Cat Zingano returned to action with a victory in a brand new promotion. This article is being written in by Mike Heck. Zingano made her Bellator debut Friday night in defeating a gritty Gabby Holloway via unanimous decision in a co-main event at Bellator 245. She entered Bellator on the heels of a 7-fight run in the UFC where she won 3 and 4, which included a world title fight against Ronda Rousey and a TKO win over Amanda Nunes. After a long layoff, Zingano was happy to get the win, but knows there's room for improvement. I said that there were a lot of red flags in her fight against Gabby Holloway, and even though she won the fight, there is something she has to work on if she wishes to go and get a title. She goes on to say, I can immediately see where I can do better, and I'm capable of doing better, Zingano told reporters backstage after the win. There were different positions we were stuck in that I'm definitely going to take back to the drawing board and work on. It's definitely not a perfect performance. I have a ton of things I can do better, and I will. Gabby was a great fighter for me to have. It's only up from here, but I'm also very humbled that at any moment you're an underdog. All these people are tough, so I just got to stay chill about it. Keep working hard, take everything I saw, went through this moment, take it home, and improve it in some way, shape, or form. Holloway entered the fight on an even longer layoff over 3 years. The 30-year-old last competed at Bellator 174 in March 2017, finishing Alexis Defrunstening via second-round TKO. Holloway has also competed against some of the top 145ers in the world, including former Bellator champion Juliet Budd and the next title challenger Arlene Blencowe. Blencowe. So despite her 6-5 record heading in, Holloway had never been finished, which is a streak that is continuing on Friday night. After 2 dominant rounds by Zingano, Holloway turned the table and had her opponent in big trouble. After being mounted for nearly a minute, Zingano was able to sweep and end the round on top. Zingano knew it was going to be a tough fight for her going in. Gabby's been toe-to-toe with so many great women. You can't finish that girl. Zingano explained it. She's got more heart than a lot of people that I felt in there with. And they are very obvious that the second we put hands on each other, the look in her eye, the way she was breathing, she's game. She's ready, and her fight record doesn't need to reflect that. Fighting someone that's fought all the girls who are top contenders, she's coming off some of the losses, but I find someone coming off losses much more dangerous. I took her very dangerous. This is a very terrifying fight for me. I'm definitely game to fight Leslie. She's thinking about fighting Leslie Smith right now, who just had a decision win victory over Amanda Bell. I'm definitely going to fight against Leslie Smith. I've been watching her, and I know she's been watching me for many years. We came up around the same era. We have a lot of fighters and people in common. And I think it would be really interesting to get in there against someone like her and kind of figure out how that would go. So she's thinking about fighting against Leslie Smith. I think that'd be too much for her, honestly. I think that's going to be too much for Cat Zingano, but since she is self-aware enough for her to go be able to reflect and be like, you know what, yeah, there were some things I definitely need to work on in the Holloway fights. If she can make a couple more adjustments, because she has the skills, she has the tools to become a great fighter, to become a champion in Bellator. Do I think it's too much Leslie Smith for her? Maybe, just maybe. So this coming in by MMAfighting.com. Also, Mackenzie Dern recounts the story of husband getting into fight with ex-coach. So this is being written in by Alexander K. Lee. Mackenzie Dern, who is one of the young prospects right now for the UFC, who people should be excited for. I think she's only had like 1 loss. She's either 1 or 2 losses. I think she's like 8-2 or 8-1. But she's somebody that people really need to look out for. Mackenzie Dern changed teams ahead of her next fight. A trip to her previous gym didn't exactly result in a warm welcome from one coach. Until recently, Mackenzie Dern spent time with the Black House team in Los Angeles. Though she's since partnered up with striking coach Jason Prello, she decided to departure from Black House as an amicable one, with the exception of an incident involving former coach Juan Gomez and her husband Wesley Santos. Dern isn't exactly sure what she or Santos did to draw Gomez's ire, but when Gomez invited them to the gym to talk business, the discussion rapidly devolved into fisticuffs. Yikes. My ex-coach Juan Gomez, I don't know what happened that he called us to go to the academy to talk. Dern said on the What the Heck show. I think he was unhappy with the bonus, like money-wise for my last fight. Basically, I always ask my coaches, hey, during camp, if you have anything, just talk to my husband. Obviously at home, me and him talk about everything, so we're the same person, but when I'm in camp, I don't have to be thinking about it. I don't want to think about money or coaches or anything like that. Let's just talk about training. So my husband talked to him. My husband's like the surfer guy, you know, totally good vibes, afro, definitely not the fighter style. We went on to go talk to him, and Gomez was just like, no, if you want to come to the academy and we'll talk, and hung up. We went to the academy, and he just swept dirt onto my husband, pushed him, and my husband pushed him back, and they just went into a fist fight. It wasn't like a brawl, a crazy brawl, it was like a street fight or a technical fist fight. Alright, technical fist fight. Alright then, back and forth, my husband's doing feints, and I'm like, where's he learning all this? It was so crazy. Looking back, Dern can laugh about the story now. Not only was she impressed by her husband's stand-up skills, the quarrel itself was being cheered on by students, trainers, and other coaches at the gym. Yeah, I'm right now thinking about Street Fighter right now. You know, like, there are two people fighting who have no business fighting, but in the background you can see a lot of people, like, wearing, like, their gis and outfits, being like, yeah, man, go for it, go! So this includes Dern's father, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ace Wellington Megaten Diaz, who did his best to give Wesley a few pointers. I think they both kind of thought they were going to separate this fight, and everyone's just kind of like, hey, 1-1. Alright? My dad's there trying to coach his son-in-law. Okay, turn to your right. You're doing good. And they're fully fighting, and my husband did so good. As soon as I saw that my coach attacked my husband and just finished it for us, I love blackouts and everything they've done. Wait, who won? I want to know this. Who actually won? I know she's giving praise to her husband, but who actually won the fight? You know, I love blackouts and everything they've done for me, but that coach, I can't work with that no matter how much, I don't know. If you're mad about it because your bonus wasn't high enough, you just can't attack someone, especially when my husband is so humble with water, and he's like, can we have that talk that you asked me to do? I don't know what happened. To this day, we still don't know exactly what pushed that level. Gomez and Black House officials didn't immediately respond to comment on this matter. Dern is viewing the camp change as a blessing in disguise, despite the unfortunate circumstances that have forced her to permanently relocate for now. She credits Prelo with taking her striking to the next level. She could be which could be a major factor in an upcoming fight against Randall Marcos. By the way, Mackenzie Dern, man, really good striker, really good. The only person in the story that she really feels bad for is Wesley. Though it sounds like her husband escaped any injury, otherwise Dern sees the end result as a blessing in disguise. It's crazy how much information, how much it's opened my eyes. Dern said of working with Prillo, a totally different style of coaching, of me learning everything, different energy. It's really opened my eyes to different things that I was missing, that I was doing wrong. Little details that he gave me to help me become a better striker. Just in training, there's Luke Rockhold and Marlon Chitavera and Scott Eastwood, and there's all these guys out there training, and we're all just exchanging information and having fun, and Coach Perillo, they're just helping me prepare. It's just a good energy. Okay. Okay, Luke Rockhold, good energy? Okay, to be honest with you, whenever I watch a Luke Rockhold video, I'm always smiling or giggling my butt off, dude. There's something so awkward and weird about him and his aura and presence that, to be perfectly honest with you, man, I'm just like, I don't know. I would want to have, I want to have one day where, like, me and my friends and, like, is hanging out with Luke Rockhold, and I want to see how truly awkward this guy is. I really want to know. But, you know, if Mackenzie Dern likes Luke Rockhold, good for that. But I want to know, who actually won the fights? According to Mackenzie Dern, she's all like, man, I'm impressed that my husband was able to, like, dodge. That pretty much is it, though. Because what Mackenzie Dern is saying is like, okay, so my dad was there, and he's telling my husband how to feint, how to move, how to duck, how to dodge, and apparently her husband doesn't know how to fight, apparently, and now he's fighting with her coach, her striking coach. I'm guessing right now, he got his butt whooped. And then they just separated. That is what I'm thinking right now, then. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds goofy how this even happened. I'm laughing at this story right now. But wow. It was strange. Very, very strange. Another fight that went under the rug was C.R. Eubanks defeating us Julia via unanimous decision, and man, that was a war. These two were... Okay, C.R. Eubanks has to be this, like, small little tank engine. I'll be honest with you, if there was an Atomate division, C.R. Eubanks would be the tank of the Atomate division. So she was able to defeat Julia Villa via unanimous decision, all 29-27. It was a really great scrap. I really was impressed by C.R. Eubanks here. I feel like she reminds me a lot of Jessica Andrade, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, her striking ability is nowhere near the same level as Jessica Andrade. But, like, in terms of her stance, in terms of her posture, in terms of her fighting style, it's very similar to Jessica Andrade. So, she's right now climbing herself up in the rankings right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if by some point middle of next year, we could see C.R. Eubanks be within the top 7 of her division right now. I think that could really happen. And I'm looking at... So, Katlyn Chookagian was talking about the C.R. Eubanks fight. He's like, you know, C.R. Eubanks is the top pressure for the win. Yeah. Man, it's so weird knowing that Katlyn Chookagian is going to be fighting against Jessica Andrade soon. That's so bizarre because it's one fight, the size difference. Jessica Andrade is going to be fighting at flyweight, even though she currently fights at strawweight, and she is a small strawweight. You know what I want to see? I want to see C.R. Eubanks versus Jessica Andrade. I think that would be a war. That would be fun. That would be a super fun fight to go watch, and I love this. Nico Price is like, so many good fights and finishes tonight, getting me all fired. Yeah, UFC Vegas 10, woo. Yeah, I like that Nico Price, even he's behind the C.R. Eubanks, like the C.R. Eubanks trainer being like, yeah, man, this girl, she's great, ain't she? Yeah. But I see Katlyn Chookagian there, you know, hashtag girl power here. Who do I think will win when Katlyn Chookagian fights against Jessica Andrade? When are they set up to fight against each other? I know they're the next matchup here, and I'm so shocked because I don't know what the results are for both women fighting each other. I don't really get it. So when is it? So she'll be competing at flyweights, fighting against Katlyn Chookagian on October 18 in the UFC Fight Night event, UFC Fight Night 180. So it'll be coming up in just 1 month's time. Katlyn Chookagian should win this fight, but I really want Jessica Andrade to win it. Logically speaking, the size difference, the strength, and the power, and the reach that Katlyn Chookagian has over Jessica Andrade, Chookagian should win this. But I want to see little Jessica Andrade win, because it looks so cool to go see, like, Jessica Andrade, like, knock out Katlyn Chookagian, and then, like, he says, like, this small little girl running over this much more bigger Katlyn Chookagian, who obviously looks like she'd be perfect for a featherweight division. That would be, in terms of imagery, that would be great. I'll love to see that, but when the fight does happen, I know who I'm cheering for. That'd be great. And so that brings to a close for today's podcast. You have been a great audience today. We've had a great plethora of fights. You all should check out Angela Hill versus Michelle Waterson. Truly a fight of the year candidate. And that brings to a close. And all I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.